6 years ago, moving to a new neighborhood marked the start of a surprising chapter in my life. My wife, Emily, our daughter Sarah, and I had settled into a cozy house in a welcoming community. We quickly became friends with our neighbors, Paul and Jane. Paul, a big outgoing real estate agent, had a knack for telling captivating stories, while Jane, a tall, slim brunette, was a dedicated mother to their son, Charlie. Emily and Jane hit it off immediately and started spending a lot of time together, meeting up almost every day. Paul and I bonded over our shared love of tennis, turning it into our regular monthly ritual. Our families grew closer over time, sharing many dinners, celebrations, and casual get-togethers. Despite the age difference, Paul and I connected deeply through our love for tennis, often engaging in friendly matches. Emily and Jane's friendship further strengthened the bond between our families, creating a sense of an extended family that felt comforting and solid. I had no idea that these ordinary moments would soon be overshadowed by events that would challenge my marriage and shake the foundation of our intertwined lives. On a memorable tennis day, I played a decent match, ending the game 7 points behind my opponent. Paul and I had been playing tennis together a couple of times a month for years, becoming good friends since Emily and I moved into our new home. Paul, a large man with a gift for conversation, was thriving in real estate, while Jane stayed home to take care of their son, Charlie, who had recently turned 18 and was preparing for college. Emily and Jane had become fast friends, meeting several times a week. Emily, a fit and attractive natural brunette with shoulder-length hair, had always been the most beautiful woman to me until everything changed. When Emily said, "We need to talk," I braced myself for bad news. Initially, I thought it might be something about her car or a family issue. Our daughter Sarah had recently turned 18 and had started dating a boy named Ryan. My mind raced through possibilities, including the fear that she might be pregnant. But I was nearly convinced of it when I sat down with Emily. "Mark, my dear, you know how much I love you, right?" Emily said softly, her voice tender. "Of course, Em. I never doubted it for a minute," I replied, trying to stay cheerful despite the creeping suspicion that something else was wrong. "And I do, Mark. I love you with all my soul, and always will. I look forward to spending the rest of our lives together," Emily continued, her tone sincere and loving. "Me too, honey. But what's the matter?" I asked, sensing that something was amiss. "Mark, we've been together for 20 years, 18 of them married. I love you more every day. I've dedicated my life to you and Sarah. Do you agree?" she asked, her voice now serious and intent. I realized it wasn't about having another child, but something else Emily wanted that she thought I might object to. She had never mentioned wanting another child, so I quickly dismissed that theory. "I agree, honey. You've always put Sarah and me first," I said. "Yes, and that's why I believe you'll support me now," she said, her tone hopeful. "Well, I'm listening," I responded, my curiosity piqued. "Mark, as we age, our bodies, energy levels, and intimacy drives change. You've always been a wonderful lover, but as you've aged, it's been harder for you to keep up. It's natural, and I understand that," Emily said, her voice steady but carrying an undertone of something more. I really didn't like how things were turning out. The last thing any man wants is for his wife to question his masculinity. I had a bad feeling. She continued talking, and I just nodded, waiting for the real issue to emerge. "For me, it's different. I need closeness almost every day," she said, her tone now slightly pleading. "Don't you think I feel the same way, Emily? I love you and want to care for you, but you can't completely fight biology," I said, trying to keep my voice calm. "I know and understand this, and I don't blame you. It's just part of aging," she replied, her voice softening. "Okay, Emily, you've pointed out my shortcomings. Are you going to get to the point?" I asked, feeling my patience wearing thin. As she talked about my inability to fully satisfy her, I suspected she was about to ask for permission to have an affair. I was almost right. "Mark, please understand I'm not trying to belittle you. This is hard for me to say, and I hope we can discuss it calmly," Emily said, her voice trembling slightly. I stayed silent, waiting. "Mark, I have a lover. It's been almost a year now," she finally confessed, her voice breaking. I was stunned and couldn't respond. She kept talking to fill the silence. "We meet a couple of times a week. I don't love him. I love only you. I tried to keep things normal at home. You always had me when you wanted, and that won't change. You're my husband, and your needs come first," she said, her voice desperate for understanding. "So you intend to continue this?" I asked, my voice shaking with suppressed anger. "Yes, Mark. My needs have increased, and I need this. But it won't change how I feel about you or our relationship," she replied, her voice firm. "Who is he?" I demanded, my voice rising. "I'm not telling you. It's not one of your friends or colleagues, just someone I met," she answered, her voice flat. "And you expect me to accept this because I love you?" I said, disbelief coloring my words. "Yes. I know you love me and want me to be happy. I've tried hard to make sure you didn't notice any changes. The alternative would be a divorce, alimony, and child support. I love you and don't want that, she said, her voice now calm and calculated. I tried to stay calm, but inside I was furious. How dare she threaten me with divorce? Sarah might not be happy living with a cheating mother. You've got it all figured out, haven't you? You deceived me and now expect me to accept it, I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. Please don't see it that way, honey, she pleaded. Don't call me that, I snapped. Being angry and using harsh language won't help, she said, her voice admonishing. It may not, but it makes me feel better, I retorted. I know this is hard to hear, but this won't affect us. You didn't notice before, and you won't in the future. It's just something I do for myself. It's like volunteering in my free time, she explained, her voice detached. Okay, let's assume I believe you, which I don't. But why now? I asked, my voice tinged with suspicion. What do you mean? She asked, confused. You managed to lie and deceive me for a year. Why tell me now? I demanded, needing to understand her motive. I plan to show you how much I love you and how grateful I am for allowing this, but he's taking me to Italy for a week, Emily said, her voice calm but determined. Are you kidding me? You leave for a week with your lover while I work to support you, and I'm supposed to welcome you back? What did I do to deserve such disrespect? I retorted, my anger barely contained. You didn't do anything, Mark. This isn't disrespectful to you. I need you to understand that I'm doing this for myself, and it doesn't change how I feel about you, she replied, her tone pleading for understanding. I don't get it. What about Sarah? What will you tell her about your solo vacation? We've always traveled as a family, I questioned, trying to grasp the situation. I already told Sarah that some friends and I are taking a trip, and it won't affect our family vacation this summer. She didn't mind, and might even be glad I'm going, Emily explained, almost cheerfully. She giggled, as if it were a light-hearted topic. And you think I'll let her believe this lie? I asked, incredulous. What proof do you have otherwise, Mark? I showed her brochures and promised to tell her all about it when I return. She'd rather believe me than you, she said, her voice confident. So you can do whatever you want, and my opinion doesn't matter. If I don't like it, too bad. How do you expect to stay married to me after this? I demanded, feeling the weight of her betrayal. We love each other, Mark. Everything will go back to normal once I return, Emily insisted, her voice soothing but unconvincing. I'm tired of this nonsense, I said, my patience exhausted. She hadn't thought about the long-term consequences. Even if we stayed married, which we won't if she goes, things wouldn't be the same. I made one last attempt. Emily, don't go. We can work on our marriage and make things better. Just please, don't go. Mark, I'm going, but everything will be as before. You'll see. I love you too much to let this change anything, she replied, her resolve unshaken. I tried. This has already changed everything, but you've done your duty by telling me. Have a good time. Unlike you, I won't lie. I'll be in the workshop if you care, I said, my voice heavy with resignation. Mark, be careful. Operating power tools while upset is dangerous, she cautioned. I walked to the basement, ignoring her. I couldn't believe she thought I'd agree to this. Despite her thoughts, I intended to tell Sarah what her mother was up to. A trip to Italy, of all places. We had planned to go there as a family, and now she decided to go with that guy. I considered my options. Divorce was likely in our no-fault state. I'd be responsible for child support and possibly alimony. I could afford it, but I didn't like the idea of her living with her boyfriend while I worked and lived alone. I didn't see any other option but to stay until Sarah left for college and then leave, but I wouldn't touch Emily again. I'd been in the workshop for hours when I heard Sarah come home. Usually she spent Sundays with friends or Ryan. I decided to tell Sarah the truth when I heard her talking to Emily. Hey Mom, have you told Dad about your trip to Italy with Mr. Thompson yet? Sarah asked, her voice casual but tinged with curiosity. Damn, she knew everything. Emily hadn't told her a story about friends. Sarah knew the truth and didn't mind. Who was Mr. Thompson? Did Sarah know him? I thought to myself, feeling a surge of anger and confusion. Yes, I told him. He wasn't happy and is now sulking in the carpentry shop, but he'll come around. He has no choice, Emily replied, her tone dismissive. I can't believe he's so selfish, Mom. If he truly loved you, he'd be happy for you to get your needs met. He'll have to accept that you need a younger man. As long as he gets his way, he has no reason to complain, Sarah said, her voice full of teenage indignation. Who was this kid? Emily had been filling Sarah's head with this nonsense for years. She truly was Emily's mini-me, I realized with a sinking heart. I told him that, but he took it personally. His fragile male ego can't accept that he can't meet all my needs. I explained that people change with age, but he sees me as his woman, Emily continued, her voice laden with condescension. No respect. I'm glad I introduced you to Mr. Thompson. He's excited about the trip and has special plans for you, Sarah said almost gleefully. My daughter knew about the affair and had even helped her mother. She seemed to revel in my humiliation. How did my 18-year-old daughter know anyone older than her that Emily could date and afford a trip to Italy. At least I had a name to investigate, I thought, feeling a mixture of betrayal and resolve. Honey, please don't talk to him about our personal life, okay? It's uncomfortable and inappropriate, Emily admonished, her voice suddenly stern. You told me things weren't working with Dad, and that it was time to find a lover, like Grandma did. You complained about not meeting anyone, and I found someone for you. That gives me some freedom, Sarah responded, sounding defiant and proud. True, but you still shouldn't talk about it with Rick. You're underage and he's your teacher, Emily said, her voice filled with concern. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My wife and daughter were conspiring together, and Sarah was talking about things she shouldn't even understand. I needed to confront this situation head on, but first, I needed to gather all the facts. Jackpot. Now my plans took a drastic turn. I wouldn't stay in the same house with these two traitors. Divorce wasn't an option either. I'd be responsible for expenses until Sarah graduated in June. I'd move out, live elsewhere, and keep a household account for bills and food. I'd stay in touch by email and phone, deciding which costs to cover. Sarah's days of getting everything she wanted, like the car she'd been asking for, were over. I could arrange everything within 2 weeks while Emily's credit card still worked. I'd find a place to live easily. I wouldn't pretend everything was fine, but wouldn't make a scene either. Sarah would eventually learn that I knew about her role in her mother's betrayal, and I was curious about her reaction. I went upstairs to take a shower and planned to go out for dinner. I didn't want to sit at the table with traitors. As I entered the kitchen, both glanced at me. Sarah ran up as usual. "Hello, Daddy," Sarah said, her voice cheerful. She tried to hug me, but I just stood there. She pulled away, puzzled. "What's the matter, Dad?" she asked, her tone confused. I looked at them and walked to my bedroom. I'd moved my things into a spare room until I could leave. For now, I closed the doors and got into the shower. Emily, of course, couldn't leave me alone. She found her way in. "What the hell was that? Be angry with me if you want, but don't take it out on your daughter. She didn't do anything to you," Emily said, her voice sharp. I stared at her, then got back into the shower. "So, silent treatment? How mature. When you're done sulking, let me know. Dinner is ready," she said, slamming the door behind her. I shrugged and got dressed. Coming out, I saw them eating. They fell silent when I entered. Sarah smiled, hoping I'd join them and maybe apologize. I turned and walked out. I got into my Audi and left. I ate alone at a local steakhouse, reading news articles to pass the time. No calls from anyone. I watched a late movie, got home around 1 a.m. and found everyone asleep. I quickly fell asleep in the guest room. Of course, my good times were short-lived. Despite everything, I still found Emily attractive. "Why did you sleep here last night?" she asked. "To avoid you, Emily. I didn't want to sleep with you," I replied bluntly. "Seems like part of you is interested," she said, reaching out. I turned away, getting off the bed, and saw disappointment on her face. "Mark, I'm still the woman you loved all these years. Let me take care of you," she said softly. "You're not the same woman, and that's not the heart you shared, Emily. As long as you have another partner, I'm out. It's your choice, your husband or your boyfriend," I said, my voice firm. "You're not being reasonable. I know you love me and will eventually see my point. I want you to be happy, and you'll give me this," she said, leaving the room. Sunday was like Saturday. I stayed in the workshop and returned for dinner. The next 2 weeks flew by as I worked late every evening. Each night, I asked Emily not to go on the trip. "Emily, please don't go. Call him and end it. Let's work on us," I pleaded. "Mark, I understand this is hard, but I need to go. It's just 1 week, and then we'll go back to our relationship," she insisted. "So you'll keep seeing him. It's not just you and me," I asked, feeling the despair. "Yes, Mark, I'm sorry, but this is what I need. If you love me, you'll understand," she said, her tone unwavering. This continued until the night before her departure. Sarah finally came to me a few days after I overheard her and Emily. "Dad, stop avoiding me. We need to talk to solve this. Please, I love you," Sarah said, her voice earnest. "Sarah, I could tell you why I'm angry, but someone else should explain," I responded, my voice heavy. "Someone else? What do you mean?" she asked, puzzled. "Ask your teacher, Mr. Thompson. You set him up with your mother to deceive me. Maybe he can answer you," I said, watching her reaction. Sarah was surprised I knew about her and Emily's lover, but she didn't look apologetic, just like her mother. "So you know I introduced them." "How?" she asked, her voice calm. "I overheard your conversation with your mother," I replied. "It's just sex, Dad. She doesn't love him," she said dismissively. "Why does everyone say that like it justifies it? Marriage is more than sex and love," I said, trying to make her understand. "She's leaving, and there's nothing you can do. Do your best, and you'll keep getting what you deserve," Sarah said, leaving the room. She left the room, dismissing me and my feelings. We avoided each other until her mother left. Finally, the day came. Emily was packed and waiting in the living room for the taxi. Sarah was with her, chatting excitedly. I stayed in the workshop until I heard the car arrive. "My taxi is here, honey. I'd like to check out." "Bye," This means nothing. You'll see, Emily called out, her voice carrying a forced cheerfulness. She waited for a response. Aren't you going to kiss me goodbye? She asked, a hint of expectation in her voice. Nope, I replied flatly. As you wish, she said, her voice now tinged with resignation. Eventually, I heard the door close, Emily's heels clicking on the kitchen floor, and then the front door shut, followed by the sound of her suitcases and the car engine starting. It was the end of my marriage. I took the week off during Emily's absence and moved my things out quietly while Sarah was at school. I moved my belongings from the guest room back to the bedroom, hoping to make Sarah think I was staying to lull them into a false sense of security. I avoided mentioning my move or divorce, wanting Emily to believe I'd be there when she returned. She was due back Saturday evening, and I planned to be gone by then. Sarah knew I was aware of her involvement in the affair and didn't hide her actions. One evening, as she prepared dinner, my phone rang with Emily's call, which I ignored. Then Sarah's phone rang, and I overheard her conversation. Hello, Mom. How was your trip? Sounds great. No, he's here. Since he knows who it is and that I introduced you, there's no point in hiding. He moved his things back to your bedroom as soon as you left. He was bluffing, just like you said. I think he's come to terms with it. Okay, I'll tell him I love you, she said. She then relayed Emily's message. Mom asked me to tell you she loves you and that everything will be as before when she returns. I nodded, accepting her words. The rest of the week went similarly. I gradually moved my things to my new apartment, taking only personal belongings. On Friday evening, I realized my relationship with Sarah was irreparably damaged. After dinner, Sarah approached me. Are you ever going to talk to me about anything other than grumbling and monosyllabic answers again? You forgave Mom, but what about me? She asked, her voice a mix of frustration and hurt. I looked at her questioningly. What makes you think I forgave your mother? I asked, genuinely puzzled. You moved back to the bedroom. That means you're going to sleep there with her and have forgiven her, she replied, her tone suggesting that this was an obvious conclusion. Sarah, I have not and will never forgive your mother. She ruined what we had, I said, my voice steady but filled with underlying pain. I don't understand why you're acting this way, Sarah responded, her voice rising in exasperation. No, she wants it, and that's the difference. You're barely 18, Sarah. You don't fully understand, I replied, trying to maintain my composure. She stood up, angry. Just because I'm 18 doesn't mean I can't understand what Mom is going through. She explained everything to me, she said, her voice defiant. I got angry too, and raised my voice. Yes, she explained it from her selfish point of view. She decided she was the only one who mattered. I don't want to talk to you about anything, I said, feeling the rage and betrayal boiling over. Dad, I'm so sorry, she added suddenly, realizing the impact of her words. The rage and hatred I felt toward my daughter at that moment were overwhelming. Sarah, don't. Never talk to me again, I said, my voice cold and final. I walked out and went to my bedroom one last time, ignoring Sarah's pleas. I spent the night collecting my remaining things, my heart heavy with the weight of shattered trust and broken relationships. I took a taxi from the airport instead of asking Rick for a ride since Sarah told me Mark was back in the bedroom. I didn't want to upset Mark by seeing Rick. Everything was going well, and I didn't want to rock the boat. When I entered the house, the taxi driver brought my things inside. It was almost dinner time, and I expected Mark or Sarah to have something ready, but there was nothing. Maybe Mark was planning a dinner to celebrate my return. I heard footsteps on the stairs, and Sarah rushed to hug me, crying, "Hi, baby. I missed you too, but there's no need to cry," I said gently, trying to soothe her. She sobbed and trembled, clearly more than just missing me. I pulled her face away to look at her. "What's wrong, baby? Where is Dad?" I asked, concern filling my voice. She struggled to control her emotions, and after a few minutes, she spoke. "Dad moved out. I drove him away." "What are you talking about? You told me he moved back to the bedroom," I said, confusion and worry battling within me. "Yes, but last night we fought and I said something terrible. This morning he and his things were gone. There's a note on the table," she explained, her voice breaking. I saw the note, which I hadn't noticed before. With a growing sense of dread, I picked it up. It was printed from the computer, except for Mark's signature. "Emily, I hope your time in Italy with Rick Thompson was worth it because it cost you your marriage and might cost Rick his job. The school board will not accept your relationship. I've moved out, taking only my personal belongings. I'll eventually get my tools and woodworking supplies. I can't understand why your sexual needs became more important than our marriage. I was willing to forgive your year-long affair if you called off the trip and vowed never to see him again, but our marriage ended when the taxi left. I also can't understand why you involved our daughter in your affair. The disrespect she shows me is a result of your influence. You've likely damaged her ability to have a normal relationship. I've only left you and Sarah physically. I didn't shirk my responsibilities. All your bills will continue to be paid automatically, and funds will be deposited into your household account for necessary expenses. Don't expect extra money for entertainment. Your pleasures don't concern me anymore. I left my email and phone for emergencies. If you need anything, email me, and I'll decide if I'll fund the request. Don't flood my email with requests to come home or excuses. I'll delete them without reading. Michael knows where I live but won't share this information. Security won't allow you into my office if you try. I'll tell you the same thing I told Sarah after her hateful speech. I don't want to talk to you or her ever again. Your selfish actions have damaged both relationships, and I will no longer be involved in your lives. I'm sure Sarah will find someone to walk her down the aisle. I've loved you both for so long, but your attitude has reached a point of destruction. I will not allow you to do this to me. Tears streamed down my face as I finished reading Mark's letter. This wasn't how things were supposed to be. He was supposed to love me forever and understand that this wasn't about him or us. Involving Sarah was a mistake, but it started with girl talk. She told me about her and Ryan, and I talked about Mark and me to build trust. I mentioned her grandma's affair, and Sarah introduced me to Rick at her choir performance. He was handsome and sexy, and I enjoyed my time with Mark that evening. After that, Sarah kept bringing him up, saying he wasn't looking for anything serious, just fun. I took the bait and started contacting him. One night while Mark was out of town, I invited Rick over for dinner. We ended up at his place, and I spent the night there. The next morning, Sarah knew what happened. We talked about it like old friends. It was exciting, and I realized I could keep seeing Rick without Mark finding out. Rick and I met a couple of times a week discreetly for months. I made sure Rick wasn't getting too attached, and our affair continued. Approaching the anniversary of our first night together, Rick invited me to Italy. Mark and I had planned to go, but the thought of a week in paradise was too tempting. As a housewife, I couldn't justify such a long absence, but I convinced myself Mark wouldn't mind and would let me go. I thought if I explained there was no love between Rick and me, just sex, Mark would understand. That's why I told him 2 weeks in advance, hoping he'd come to terms with it. Obviously, that didn't happen. I was sure when I returned and things were the same, Mark would see it didn't damage him. But he left, and I underestimated his love for me. Now the love of my life is gone, but I'm resourceful and sure I can find him and convince him to see things my way. I might have to cool things with Rick for a while and convince Mark it's over before resuming. Mark's brother Mike knows his new address, but I doubt he'd help. Maybe Fiona, Michael's wife, would. Once I find Mark, I can probably convince him to come back. He didn't mention divorce, so he clearly doesn't want to lose me. He might be trying to get his point across with his "I never want to talk to you again" message, but I doubt he meant it. He'll realize he can't live without me. I'll start Monday by calling Fiona when Michael is at work. Until then, Sarah and I will manage. It was a beautiful day, and I decided to relax by the pool. The apartment complex I had moved into had a pool, a fitness center, and a large common area for parties. I'd lived here for a couple of months. The first week was spent unpacking and working. For the next few weeks, I was depressed and just watched TV. Finally, I decided to live again and went to the pool to relax and get some sun. The water was probably too cool for me, but lying in the sun and reading was perfect. I went on a few dates, but no one caught my attention. I was still mourning the loss of my family and missing the Emily I had married. I'd been relaxing in a sun lounger for about an hour when a shadow fell over me. I opened my eyes and saw an attractive woman. "Hello, I haven't seen you here before. Have you just moved in?" she asked, her voice friendly and curious. "About 2 months ago. My name is Mark," I replied, offering a smile. "Sophie, nice to meet you." "May I join you?" she asked, gesturing to the lounger next to mine. "Of course, have a seat," I said, sitting up slightly to make room. She smiled and moved a lounger next to mine. She had long brown hair and a beautiful figure with no wedding ring. She turned to me and asked, "So, Mark, are you recently divorced or just trying to appear single?" "Why do you ask?" I inquired, curious about her observation. "Your finger has a tan line where a wedding ring used to be," she said, her eyes sharp. "Very observant. And you noticed I checked your finger too," I remarked, impressed by her attention to detail. "Well, I'm not divorced. I moved out while my wife was in Italy with her lover," I admitted, feeling a mix of emotions. "Oh my God, that must be an interesting story," she said, leaning in slightly. "It's not that interesting living it, but I can see how it might seem from the outside," I said, shrugging. "Any chance of reconciliation?" she asked, her tone empathetic. "No, I care about her, but what she did ended any chance of that," I said firmly. "You can tell me about it when you invite me to dinner tonight," she suggested, a playful smile on her lips. "Is there somewhere specific you want to go?" I asked, intrigued by her boldness. Someplace nice, and you'll ask me to dance. My daughter is staying with my sister so we can stay out late, she said, her eyes twinkling with anticipation. Sounds good, I agreed, feeling a spark of excitement. Sophie looked at me and made direct eye contact. Let me be clear, Mark. I like you, and you seem to like me, but I don't sleep with married men, so if you want a chance, you'll need to sort out your marital status, she said, her voice firm but kind. I think I just got the incentive I needed, but let's see how dinner goes first, I said, feeling a new sense of determination. We spent another hour relaxing by the pool, mostly in silence, saving conversation for dinner. As I got ready for my date with Sophie, I thought about this unexpected turn. I loved being married but wasn't sure about jumping into a new relationship. My feelings about Sarah were complicated. She had said hurtful things influenced by her mother's views. I knew I'd try to mend things with her eventually, but Emily was done. I wouldn't let her stop me from living my life, even if it meant paying her off. I picked Sophie up at 6 p.m., and we went to an elite Brazilian steakhouse downtown. I had been there before, but Sophie hadn't. She wore an emerald green dress that showed some skin on top. She looked stunning, and I told her so. Thank you, sir. You look good yourself, Sophie said with a smile. I took her hand and led her to my Audi, opening the door for her as my mother had taught me. We drove through downtown, talking about the places we passed. We held hands, and it felt comfortable. We were seated at a romantic table in a private alcove, thanks to a well-placed $50 bill. We settled in and were greeted by our server, Jenna. We ordered drinks and started to talk. Do I need to ask for another waitress? Sophie asked. Why? I responded, confused. If she keeps pestering you, I'll claw her eyes out, and I wouldn't want to do that, she said, a mischievous glint in her eyes. I saw the mischief in her eyes and smiled, but I made a mental note to tone it down, just in case. She took my hand to calm me down. Mark, I like you and want to get to know you better. I didn't mean to offend the waitress, Sophie said softly. I'm flattered you laid your claim on me, I replied, feeling a warm glow. So what do you do for a living? She asked, genuinely interested. I'm a mechanical engineer and senior VP at Beta Logistics. And you? I inquired. I'm a loan officer at First Bank, though I could live off the alimony and child support from my ex-husband who cheated on me with his assistant and got her pregnant, she said, her voice steady but with an undercurrent of pain. I can't imagine anyone cheating on someone as beautiful as you, I said, shaking my head in disbelief. Thank you. Do you have kids? She asked. An 18-year-old daughter named Sarah. But we're not talking much because she shares her mother's views on cheating, I explained, a hint of sadness in my voice. I'd like to hear about your wife, but only if you're comfortable, Sophie said gently. I don't mind, though I appear very favorably from my side of the story, I said, trying to lighten the mood. Don't worry, I'll judge for myself, she reassured me. I told her the story from the "we need to talk" moment to Sarah's angry outburst and my early morning departure. Mark, it sounds like Sarah is as much a victim of her mother's influence as you are, Sophie said sympathetically. It hurts that she thinks so little of me, even if it's Emily's doing, I admitted. Keep communication open. She'll come around someday, she advised. I hope so. I'll make the effort, I said, determined. Are you ready to share your story, Sophie? I asked. My ex, Luke, is VP of a gym chain. He got a new assistant and they started sleeping together on business trips. His boss even warned him. When she got pregnant, I left him and got generous alimony and child support. I don't need to work, but it gives me a reason to get up every day, she explained. That's pretty juicy. Maybe not as much as an affair in Italy, but still good. You seem to be handling the breakup well, I observed. Yes, but loneliness can get to me. It was the right decision, but I miss what we had, she admitted. If you ever feel bad, call me. I'll come over. We can talk or watch a movie. I've been there, and I'll help you, I offered sincerely. Thanks, Mark. I might take you up on that, she said, smiling. She smiled and took my hand. I felt the need to do something, so I stood up and kissed her on the cheek. I'm looking forward to more kisses, including longer ones when you give me a ride home, I said with a smile. I kissed her again and returned to my seat. Dinner was excellent, as was our conversation. We went to a dance club for older people. Sophie, at 35, was the most attractive woman there, and guys kept asking her to dance, but she refused them all. We danced together several times, moving well and staying close. At 2 a.m., we stopped at her apartment door. I had a wonderful time, Mark, Sophie said, her eyes sparkling. Me too, Sophie. Can I see you tomorrow or is it too soon? I asked, hoping for a positive response. No, it's not too soon. If I could see you earlier, I would, she replied with a smile. Great. I have to pick up Lily at 11, so it has to be before then. I don't introduce her to anyone until we've been together at least a month. How about breakfast at my place? I make a great omelet, I suggested. I'll be there at 8:30, she agreed. The knock came at 8:30, and I appreciated the promptness. Sophie was dressed in black yoga pants and a white long-sleeve top, looking as fresh as if she had slept for 12 hours. "I brought sliced fruit for your omelet," she said, holding the bowl in one hand and pulling me towards her with the other for a kiss. She walked into the kitchen confidently and looked over the ingredients. "I'd like bacon, spinach, and cheese in mine, please," she requested, placing the fruit on plates while I prepared the omelet. She began opening drawers and cabinets, which puzzled me. "Our kitchens are arranged almost identically. I find it interesting," she remarked with a chuckle. I laughed and finished serving the omelet. I felt at ease with Sophie, as if we had known each other for years. After eating, we sat on the sofa, hugged, and chatted. Soon it was time for her to pick up Lily from her sister's house. I walked her to the car and kissed her goodbye. "Call me later," she said, driving away. On Monday morning, I made an appointment with a divorce lawyer. I asked a friend at AITA who he had used for his divorce. He recommended a fierce lawyer his ex had used. I found her number online and scheduled an appointment for Wednesday. Emily didn't want a divorce, so I figured she wouldn't initiate one. I was eager to explore my relationship with Sophie and wondered if it was enough to just file for divorce. Sophie and I talked on the phone over the next 2 evenings. I told her about my lawyer visit and she reassured me it would be worth it. On Wednesday, I received a call from my brother Michael. "What's up, bro?" I greeted him. "Just updating you. Emily keeps asking for your address. She's been trying to get Fiona to help her," Michael informed me. "Fiona won't tell her anything, but Emily is getting desperate," he added. "Thanks for being my buffer, Mike. Let me know if I can do anything for you," I said gratefully. "Not necessary, but we'll figure something out," he replied. "Has she tried anything at your office?" I asked, concerned. "She came a few times initially, but got nowhere. She still calls daily, and our secretary enjoys it as a game," Michael said with a laugh. The lawyer meeting went well. Denise Duncan, who specializes in helping women in divorces, took my case. After seeing the evidence I had from a private investigator, she believed we could leverage this evidence in our favor. Despite her suggestion to use the investigator's report, I was ready to split everything fairly and take on alimony and child support. That evening, I was deciding on dinner when there was a knock at the door. Sophie entered with a picnic basket and plates. I took them from her, placed them on the table, and kissed her. "Wow, baby, that was a nice greeting. I missed you too." "Where's Lily?" Sophie asked, smiling up at me. "She's out for pizza with a friend. I guessed you hadn't eaten yet and wanted to know how the lawyer visit went. We both want this to start," she said, her eyes filled with anticipation. "Yes, baby, we do. We need to communicate properly, and that marriage certificate is in the way. Let's eat," I said, feeling a sense of relief at her support. She pulled out containers of brisket and potato salad and we started eating. I detailed my visit to the lawyer while we enjoyed the meal. "You're being kinder than I was. Jay and I were only married for 9 years. Should I be tougher?" Sophie asked, looking thoughtful. "That depends on you, dear, but I like that you're attentive and fair. I know if we quarrel, you'll be reasonable." "Jay couldn't do that," I replied, appreciating her understanding. She stayed with me for about 2 hours before getting a call saying they were returning from the pizzeria. I walked her halfway to her apartment and watched her go inside. She was cautious and didn't let me walk her all the way home. I felt like I floated back to my apartment. I was getting more upset. I couldn't believe Fiona wouldn't help me. Women were supposed to support each other. She refused to find Mark's new address. I tried following him from work, but he never went straight home, or I lost him in traffic. Before, I met Rick twice a week, but after Mark left, it became 3 or 4 times a week. I needed it, and with Mark gone, it was his fault I turned to Rick more often. However, in the last 2 weeks, Rick met me only once. He's under pressure from the school board's investigation into our affair and is trying not to get fired. The union is fighting for him, but it doesn't look good. We didn't think about the consequences. I was starting to think the Italy trip, amazing as it was a big mistake. Money was also tight. Mark barely gives me enough for Sarah and me. We have to eat at home every night and can only watch movies on premium channels because we can't afford the theater. Even then, we ordered too many movies, and Mark threatened to cut off cable if we didn't reduce the number. He's being completely unreasonable. Sarah is here, and at least she has Ryan to take her out sometimes, but I can't give her spending money, so Ryan has to pay every time now. Ryan is pressuring Sarah to have sex to contribute to the relationship, and she's mad at me for it. All this is because Mark's ego can't handle another younger man taking care of my needs. I still love him, but if he comes back, he needs to meet all my needs, or accept that I'll have someone on the side. This is not discussed. On a bright Friday morning at 9:45, my phone rang. Emily must have received the divorce papers around 9:30. I didn't answer since I was at work, but listened to the voicemail immediately. "It's all out of control, Mark. I destroyed the papers. I won't sign them. We're not getting a divorce. You need to call me right now so we can move on together." Emily said, her voice aggressive and insistent. I wasn't surprised by her response. She still believed I should accept her actions and that it was my failure, not hers. I hadn't mentioned the private investigator report yet, but it might be the ammunition to end this. The investigator found evidence easily in Italy where they were less careful. Sophie and I planned to go out tonight. We had met a week ago, so I wasn't familiar with Lily yet. Tonight, we were meeting Sophie's sister, Karen, and her husband John, while the kids stayed with friends. I was nervous, but optimistic. When I picked Sophie up, she looked stunning in a knee-length purple dress and heels. We met John and Karen at the restaurant and made introductions. We sat at a square table with Sophie on my right and Karen on my left. Karen asked, "Sophie said you're getting a divorce. How's that going?" Sophie expected me to handle this alone. "My wife got the papers today, but she plans to fight it. She can't force me to stay married, but she'll try," I replied, trying to keep my tone steady. "But you have evidence of her betrayal," Karen said, pressing the point. "Yes, which we can use for leverage. Her mother is also an unrepentant cheater, so no help there. But the group she volunteers with might care. Eventually, it can go through without her signature if I wait long enough," I explained, laying out my plan. "And you expect Sophie to wait for this?" Karen asked, her eyes narrowing. "I don't expect Sophie to do anything she doesn't want to do. If she decides not to wait, I'll respect her choice but hope she does," I said, looking at Sophie with sincerity. "I didn't plan on worrying about the divorce, but I'm doing it to be with her," I added. "I know. I think she's worth the wait," I said, feeling a sense of resolve. Karen stared at me, processing my words, while John grinned, seemingly impressed. "For now, I approve of you, but you better hold your own on the dance floor," Karen said, her tone lightening. "I'm looking forward to it," I replied, feeling a mix of relief and anticipation. The evening went wonderfully. Sophie and I stayed close all night, except when we switched dance partners. Karen was taller and slimmer with straight blonde hair, while Sophie was bustier and rounder. Despite their differences, they were unmistakably sisters. While dancing with Karen, she said, "Sophie told me about your wife. I'm really sorry." "Thanks." It hit my self-esteem hard, but Sophie helped me a lot, I replied, appreciating her sympathy. "She really likes you. Please don't hurt her," Karen said, her tone serious. "I won't. She means a lot to me." "I really like her too," I assured her, feeling the weight of her words. After returning to the apartment complex, Sophie had to pick up the kids. Karen and John's children, Ava and Ethan, were with a nanny. I kissed Sophie goodnight as she got into her car and walked back to my apartment. I had just settled into bed when there was a knock on the door. Seeing Sophie through the peephole, I opened it and she kissed me. "Call me tomorrow," she whispered. She left and I went to bed to relieve some tension. I couldn't afford a lawyer, but the paperwork said Mark would cover reasonable costs since he was filing. I found a lawyer willing to take the case, knowing payment would come later. She informed me that the divorce would proceed regardless of my signing the papers. The judge would set the terms, likely similar to Mark's proposal. Mark offered me the house until Sarah finished her senior year and a year after, plus child support for 3 years and until June. After that, the house would be sold or I could buy it. I couldn't believe this was happening. Why did I risk losing my marriage for something with no long-term impact on Mark? I tried to meet Rick next week, but he turned me down, saying it was only fun because I was married. Now that I'm getting a divorce, it's no longer exciting for him. Mark was right. Rick was an a-hole. Sarah is a mess. She misses her dad terribly. She and I were always close, but she did a lot with Mark and misses him in her life. Everything is not as it should be. It's been 2 weeks since I met Sophie's sister Karen, and not much has progressed with the divorce. Emily still refuses to sign the papers and wants counseling, but it feels like a waste of time. Sophie and I meet whenever we can, often just for a few minutes after she puts Lily to bed. Thanks to Karen, we manage a couple of dates each week. Karen only asks that we reciprocate the favor someday, and I agreed. On Saturday, Karen babysat Lily again, and I took Sophie to dinner and a concert downtown. During dinner, while holding hands, we heard a scream from across the restaurant. "Get your damn hands off my husband right now!" Emily shouted, storming towards us with several embarrassed friends in tow. "Yes, Emily, you caught me having dinner with my neighbor." "Congratulations," I said, trying to stay calm. "Oh, don't tell me it's just dinner. I'm sure you'll have more later. Look at her. She's probably giving herself away." Emily spat, her voice full of venom. Sophie remained calm. "I respect wedding vows, even if they're not mine. We haven't done anything yet, but I look forward to when we can. Thanks for leaving him, Emily," she said, her tone composed and measured. The staff escorted Emily out as she shouted, "Stay away from him, witch!" I wondered if her friends stayed with her. Sophie reassured me. "So, this is your wife. I'm so sorry, honey. It's not worth it. This will be a great story to tell Karen and John," Sophie said, trying to lighten the mood. The rest of the evening was less dramatic, and we enjoyed the music. Sophie spent a lot of time sitting on my lap, her scent intoxicating me. On the way home, holding hands, I made a decision at her apartment door. "Sophie, honey, I need to tell you something," I said. She looked into my eyes, her hands clasped behind my neck. "What is it?" she asked softly. "I never thought it would be possible, especially so soon, but I am completely in love with you. You are my last thought at night and first in the morning. I know we have challenges ahead, but I wanted you to know how I feel," I confessed. My voice filled with emotion. She kissed me. "And I love you too, Mark. You're a wonderful person, and I can't believe you're mine. We have a lot to overcome, but it won't stop us from being together. If things were different, we'd be in my bed right now. When the time comes, it will be worth the wait," she said. We stood on her doorstep, hugging and kissing, knowing we couldn't go inside without giving in to temptation. After one last kiss, we parted ways. My lawyer called this morning with news that Mark had escalated things. His lawyer sent over photos of Rick and me in Italy, taken by a detective Mark hired. While these photos can't be used in the divorce, they could still complicate my life significantly. They might make it difficult for me to get a job if the divorce goes through as planned. Attacking Mark and Sophie at the restaurant was a mistake. I underestimated Mark, thinking he wouldn't risk losing me and would agree to share. Rick wasn't worth my marriage, and I didn't expect it to end this way. Over a month has passed since the trip, and things continue to worsen. Ryan broke up with Sarah today after their date. She really likes him and thought they would marry someday. She burst into tears when he dropped her off, running to her room. I comforted her for 15 minutes until she calmed down. "Ryan abandoned me, Mom," Sarah sobbed, her face buried in her hands. "What happened?" I asked, my heart breaking for her. "He insisted on having sex, but I kept saying no. He said he expected more from me, given my mother's behavior. When I explained what you told me about women needing lovers as they age, he asked if he could expect the same from me if we married. When I didn't answer, he broke up with me, saying I was going to cheat on him," she explained, her voice trembling with emotion. It became clear that the news of my affair had spread, likely from Rick's public school disciplinary hearing. I underestimated the consequences, thinking Mark would keep quiet to avoid embarrassment. My mother had advised me, saying Dad eventually accepted her affair with Uncle Ben to avoid public scandal. I thought Mark would react similarly. Now I need to persuade Mark to come back. Rick is out of the picture, and I can promise never to see him again. Convincing Mark that I only want him once he's comfortable, I can find a replacement discreetly. Tomorrow, I'll try following him home from work again. I spoke with Denise Duncan today, and Emily still refuses to sign the divorce papers, insisting on another chance to talk and work things out. Denise advised meeting her face-to-face to convince her I won't tolerate her behavior. Otherwise, this could drag on for months with appeals and delays. I had other things on my mind, though. It's been 5 weeks since I met Sophie, and I've fallen madly in love with her. Tonight, I'm finally meeting Sophie's daughter, Lily. Sophie assured me it wouldn't be decisive, but I know how important it is for Lily to like me. We started with a trip to a trampoline park. I drove, and Sophie held my hand while Lily smiled in the back seat. At the park, Lily grabbed my hand and pulled me into the play area. I lost a game of tag to her and finally found her sitting on a chair for one of the games. "Are 8-year-old girls really that strong?" I asked, catching my breath. She looked at me with big brown eyes. "Will you be my new dad?" she asked, her voice hopeful. Kneeling down, I took her small hands and said, "I'd like to be, if you don't mind, but you don't have to decide now. I think I'd like you to be my new dad. My friends' dads don't play with them like you do, and Mom says you make her happy," she replied, her smile wide. I felt tears welling up and asked for a hug. Sophie watched us closely as we returned to the table. Lily was Sophie's mini-me, just like Sarah was Emily's. The rest of the evening was wonderful. We played games, earned tickets, and Lily got a fancy toy. We then went for ice cream and returned to the apartment. Lily was tired, so we put her to bed, and I read her a story. Sophie and I sat on the couch. She asked, "Are you ready to be a dad to a little girl again?" At my age, I had doubts, but now that I've met her, I can't imagine anything else, I replied sincerely. "What about one of our children?" she asked, her eyes shining with hope. "Nothing would make me happier than having a child with you, Sophie. Marrying you and becoming Lily's dad would be a dream come true," I said, my voice full of emotion. She smiled widely and said she couldn't wait for my divorce any longer. We made love and I turned off my phone. Later, I found a call and voicemail from Denise. "Mark, this is Denise. Emily's lawyer said she has decided to sign the papers and will come to my office next week. You don't need to be there, but I'll let you know when everything is ready," Denise's message said, her tone businesslike but with a hint of relief. I felt a weight lift off my shoulders as I looked at Sophie, realizing that our future was finally within reach. That night, I slept very well. My marriage was finally ending. This morning, I was ready to fight to the end, but seeing Sarah crying over Ryan, I realized the pain this was causing her. I decided to sign the papers to avoid ruining my daughter's life. As a mature 41-year-old woman, I coped with this decision by going to a club, getting drunk, and going home with the first person who asked. I woke up in someone else's apartment, sent Sarah to her friend Lily's, got dressed quietly, and left. My car was still outside the club, so I called a taxi, went home, took a shower, and just wanted to go to bed. So I did. I spent the entire weekend with Sophie and Lily. We went to the zoo on Saturday and had dinner at Karen and John's on Sunday. Lily spent most of the day with Ava and Ethan since they grew up together. John, who was a nice guy and knew his way around a grill, was about 180 centimeters tall and in good shape. He played baseball in college and had just turned 40, while Karen was 38. While the sisters socialized and watched the kids, I spent time at the grill, getting to know John. He and Karen had been married for 15 years, and he was still completely in love with her. She is still the reason I get up in the morning and do what I have to do. I want her to be proud of me and happy that she married me, John said, his voice filled with determination. I'm sure you're doing everything right, John. She has that confidence from knowing she achieved her goal, I responded, hoping to reassure him. I've known Sophie for a long time. She's crazy about you, Mark. You've got a good woman. She was completely devoted to Jay, and that's why what he did hurt her so much, John continued, his tone earnest. I know what your wife did. I'd bet my life Sophie would never even take a step in that direction, I said, feeling a deep conviction. I appreciate that, Mark. I don't think Sophie would do anything like that. Otherwise, I couldn't give myself to her as completely as I do now, I added, my voice steady and confident. I was in a good mood about how both parts of my life were developing. With any luck, I could get Emily's signature on the paperwork and submit it this week. Then, after the 90-day waiting period, I could bring Sophie to the altar, which I planned to do as soon as possible. My head was spinning. I think it's Wednesday, but I've lost track. I've been getting drunk and going home with different men every night since last Friday, when I decided to sign the divorce papers. Luckily, the last few guys were better than the first, so at least I managed to drown my sorrows. But today, if it's Wednesday, I have to sign the papers. I don't know what I'll do without Mark. I love him so much, but I needed something more. I never had feelings for Rick. I was supposed to spend my life with Mark, growing old together, spoiling our grandchildren and traveling the world. Now, I'll have loneliness and regret for being such a fool. And if Mark ends up with that beautiful brunette I saw him with at the restaurant, it would be unbearable. She was gorgeous and younger than me. I couldn't live with the pain of losing Mark to someone like her. I went to my lawyer's office and we went to see Mark's lawyer. I hoped Mark would be there, but he wasn't. It hurt to see he had signed the papers weeks ago. He couldn't wait to get rid of me, and I can't blame him. Maybe someday I'll apologize in person. For now, I let my lawyer review and confirm the papers before signing them. I ate dinner alone that evening since Sarah was spending more time away, likely distancing herself from me. Then I went to the club again, found a table with 3 young guys, and told them I was offering a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity if they paid for the hotel room. We left the bar quickly, and I was completely sober. This was why I initially thought it was about money, since I only gave Emily enough for groceries. You know, after the divorce, Mom will have more money. I will pay more in alimony and child support. That's not the point, Dad. It's just... Sarah hesitated, clearly troubled. I realized she wanted to get away from her mother. Sarah, what happened? Why do you want to leave your mom and live with me? I asked gently, concerned for her well-being. Dad, she's not herself. She always seems to be drunk. Half the time she doesn't come home until the next morning. When she does come home at night, a strange guy drops her off and Mrs. Malone, our neighbor, has to take her to get her car, Sarah explained, her voice filled with worry. Does she bring men into the house? I asked, my protective instincts kicking in. I was furious, not because I cared what Emily was doing, but because Sarah might be in danger. No matter how angry I was with Emily, I didn't want any harm to come to her or our daughter. I don't know. I haven't seen them, but she might when I'm not around. I often stay at Lily's, Sarah admitted, her voice small and worried. Okay, you can stay with us, but we need to address this with your mom, I said firmly, understanding the gravity of the situation. I texted Sophie to come over immediately. Sarah and I were on the sofa when Sophie arrived, and Sarah rested her head on my shoulder. So the wedding is still on, and you're not mad at me for inviting Sarah? You can't get rid of me that easily, Sophie joked, trying to lighten the mood. She sat on the other side of Sarah, and Lily climbed onto my lap. Honey, we have a problem, I said, my tone serious. I explained Sarah's situation with Emily, who had clearly entered a self-destructive phase. Sophie was fully supportive. Do what you need to do. It's important. Do you want me to come with you? Sophie offered. I think it's better if I go alone and leave Sarah here, I replied, appreciating her support. I drove to my old house for the first time since that day. The yard was a bit neglected, but otherwise it looked fine. Emily's car was in the driveway, and no other cars were around. I hoped this was a good sign. I rang the bell. The house looked the same, but Emily didn't. She looked disheveled, had lost weight, and wore an old robe. Mark, oh my God, you're back. Please tell me you're taking me back. I'll do anything, Emily pleaded, her voice desperate. No, Emily, but I want to help you. Sarah told me what's going on. You can't go on like this, I said, trying to stay calm. She stared at me, trying to process my words, then flipped. Have you forgiven Sarah? And what about me? Where's my forgiveness? She demanded, her eyes wild. I forgive you, Emily, I said softly. Then why don't you want to take me back? I love you, Mark. I need you, please, she begged, tears streaming down her face. Emily, I said, raising my voice to get her attention. I hated yelling, but I needed her to calm down. I'm here to help you, I said, my voice firm but gentle. I took Emily to the ER, where her blood alcohol level was very high. A psychiatrist had her hospitalized for 72 hours as a danger to herself. While she was there, Sophie and I researched rehab centers and chose one. Treatment was voluntary, and we hoped to convince her to go. That was 7 years ago. As I prepared to walk Sarah down the aisle, I reflected on those events. It was a tough journey, but we made it. Sophie and I are still happily married. Lily, now 15, idolizes her older sister and looks beautiful as Sarah's maid of honor. AmITheA, 5, adores Lily and will start school soon. Tamara, 3, is full of energy and never sits still. Every night, I carry her to her crib. Sophie, 8 months pregnant, looks more beautiful every day. Yes, it's another girl. We're still debating names, but Aunt Karen might get her namesake. Sometimes I miss the Emily I married and the plans we had. I thought we'd be married for 50 years, watching generations grow, but life didn't turn out that way. We're friends now and spend time with Emily and her husband Martin every month or two. It's not what I expected, but it's a good life.